All right, let's dive in. Today, we're strapping in to deconstruct one of the most powerful experiences ever engineered, the roller coaster. But we're not just looking at it as a machine. We're looking at it as a perfect, self-contained system, an Ouroboros of engineered adrenaline.
So let's start with a big question. What if we're looking at something more than just steel and wheels? What if a roller coaster is actually a closed loop, where the end is always the beginning, perfectly mirroring one of our most ancient symbols?
And this is that symbol, the Ouroboros. It's going to be our lens for this whole explainer. It represents a closed, self-referential loop where the end is the absolute prerequisite for the beginning. And believe me, this isn't just a cool metaphor, it's the fundamental operating principle of the entire machine.
To really understand this system, we have to start with its engine, the raw power that makes this serpent move in the first place.
It all begins with that slow, deliberate climb. You know the sound, that clack, clack, clack. That isn't just building anticipation, it's the system literally doing work against gravity, storing up every single drop of energy it's going to need for the entire ride. This is potential energy. It's the head of the serpent, coiled and ready at the very top.
And then, the drop. In that one instant, all of that stored potential energy explodes into kinetic energy, the energy of pure motion. This single conversion is the one and only engine for the entire ride. Seriously. From this moment on, the serpent is just spending that initial deposit of energy, constantly fighting friction and air resistance, which, by the way, is why every hill has to be just a little bit smaller than the one before it.
But an engine is totally useless without control, right? It's just chaos. So how is this beast tamed? Well, for that, we need to look closer at the individual scales that make up the serpent's body, the critical parts that manage all this controlled mayhem.
This right here, the wheel assembly, is the critical interface where the moving train meets the static track. You've got three types of wheels all working in perfect harmony. The road wheels, on top, carry the weight. The guide wheels, on the side, keep it from flying off laterally. And then you have the upstop wheels. These were the real game changer. They run under the track, literally holding the train on, and they're the reason you can go upside down or feel that amazing airtime. But, not all wheels are created equal. Engineers have a really interesting choice to make. If they're building a hypercoaster that's all about raw blistering speed, they'll probably use hard nylon wheels. Super low friction, but you feel more vibration. On the other hand, for a smooth, graceful coaster with lots of inversions, they'll go with a softer polyurethane. It's always this balancing act, this trade-off between pure speed and controlled comfort.
Okay, now let's talk safety. Because this one sentence you see here, this is basically the golden rule of roller coaster operations. It is the unbreakable law that prevents disaster and allows multiple trains to run on the same track. But how is it actually enforced?
The answer is the brain of the beast, the Programmable Logic Controller, or PLC. It's a computer that divides the entire track into a series of segments called blocks. The PLC is constantly watching every single block, and it only sees them as one of two things, occupied or empty. A train is physically prevented from entering the next block until the PLC confirms that it's empty. And if any sensor fails, the whole system just defaults to safe and stops everything. It's brilliant.
So we've covered the physics and the hardware, we get it. But that only explains how the coaster works, not why we ride it. For that, we need to stop looking at the machine and start looking inside our own heads.
This brings us to this amazing paradox. Your body is in full-on fight-or-flight mode. Your heart is pounding, adrenaline is surging, you are experiencing all the physical symptoms of a life-threatening situation. But your conscious brain knows you are securely strapped in and perfectly, completely safe. And it's that tension, that gap between primal fear and rational safety, that's the magic ingredient. That is the thrill.
Designers are basically artists who sculpt that thrill using G-forces. Positive Gs are what push you down into your seat, making you feel heavy at the bottom of a drop. Lateral Gs shove you side to side. They usually try to minimize those. But the one everyone wants, the holy grail, is negative Gs, that incredible feeling of weightlessness as you fly over a hill. That's air time, and it's what thrill seekers are queuing up for.
Psychologists actually have a name for this mental flip we do. It's called reversal theory. Think about it. When you're standing in line, you're in a goal-oriented, or telic state. The higher arousal you feel, your fast-beating heart, you interpret that as anxiety. But the second the ride starts, the protective frame of the safety system lets your brain flip into a playful or paratelic state. And suddenly, that exact same physical arousal is reinterpreted as pure excitement. It's the same feeling, just a different label.
In this feeling, it taps into something even deeper, a philosophical idea called the technological sublime. It's that feeling of delightful horror we get when we can confront these immense, overwhelming forces like gravity and speed, but from a place of total safety. By facing these huge forces and coming out the other side unscathed, we experience this incredible feeling of transcendence.
But of course, the serpent doesn't stay the same. It evolves, it grows. So in our final section, we're going to see how technology has allowed this Ouroboros to constantly shed its skin and take on new, more and more complex forms.
And wow, what an evolution it's been. The Wooden Age was defined by thousands of individual parts, a feeling of multiplicity. Then in 1959, the Steel Age brought a single, unified track, which allowed for inversions. The Cat era in the 90s gave us these perfectly engineered, balanced forces. Today's hybrid era synthesizes the best of both wood and steel. And the next step? Well, that's the cognitive era, where the loop becomes truly recursive.
Get ready for this. Imagine AI algorithms generating track layouts that are way beyond what a human could even dream of. And then, on the ride itself, biometric sensors are measuring your heart rate, your fear response, allowing the coaster to adjust its speed and intensity in real time just for you. The rider and the ride would become a single cybernetic feedback loop. The serpent will finally be able to see its own passenger.
But this brings us to one last and pretty provocative question. If a roller coaster really is a perfectly closed system, a loop from beginning to end, what is its ultimate philosophical conclusion?
This is the Euthanasia Coaster. Now, it's a conceptual art piece, not a real proposal, but it takes our idea to its most terrifying extreme. It's designed to use 7 ever-tightening loops to subject the rider to a constant, lethal 10 Gs, which would cause brain death. It's a machine designed to bring the closed loop of life itself to a controlled, engineered end. The Ouroboros not just biting its tail to start again, but swallowing itself completely. A final, haunting thought on the power of a perfect, closed system.